Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz bassist, composer, and educator Jeff Reed. We talked to him on June 1st, 2020 during the COVID-19 lockdown about his 2019 CD, Look for the Light, and his life in music. He is currently residing in Baltimore, Maryland, and has performed extensively throughout the U.S. and throughout the world. Enjoy his story.
Well, I guess it's probably a good time to talk about music, so thanks for taking a minute out to talk about your career and this new album that you have, Look for the Light. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. This is great.
Sure. You bet. So before we get into particulars here, when did you realize, what was your personal story of realizing that jazz was coming to a silent point in mid-March maybe or early March?
Oh, wow. Well, you're in Kansas City, Missouri, right?
Yes.
It's funny because I was just there. I was on a pretty long tour that stretched from beginning of February into the middle of March. I guess it was about 6 weeks. It wasn't that long, but it was long enough for me. And we actually did come through Kansas City at one point, and I got a chance to go to the American Jazz Museum, and we went down to Arthur Bryant's to have lunch at the barbecue place down there.
Yeah.
So that tour lasted until the 16th of March. But the last two shows of the tour were canceled, so we went home on the 14th.
Yeah.
And I pretty much just came home, and immediately everything had just shut down. So I was working pretty steadily on that tour. It was a pretty busy schedule, and by the time we got to the end of it, that was just everything came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, that's kind of the way things happened here. I remember there was a band from Chicago that I'd interviewed, and I wanted to go see them at the Black Dolphin, and that was on the 14th. And there was a show the day before on the 13th with Deborah Brown, and they had canceled that as well. So everything, I think for me, the last thing I actually saw or did anything jazz-wise was saw a lecture from Dexter Gordon's widow, Maxine, at the local community college. And then, of course, that was the 12th. That was a Thursday. The 13th, they discovered that someone on the campus had COVID, and that was it. It was all over with. And I knew that was going to be the end of everything. But so talk to me a little bit about you have relatively new material that's out during a pandemic. You can't back it up with live music. What is it bittersweet for you?
Yeah, I have to say that it is. I recorded this album in November, and obviously in November, no one had any idea any of this was coming. And even into, a lot of people say in the beginning of March, they still didn't quite realize how severely we were all going to be affected by this. So I was moving forward as if I was going to be able to book some live performances to promote the album, and got everything set really from the road while I was out of town. And then, when this happened, it was like, well, I'm going to have to go ahead with it because that's what we're doing. But, not having a chance to do this live, I'm 42 at this point, and this is my first release, so I really had hoped to have that great opportunity to have a CD release party, an event to celebrate the thing. And, it's disappointing. But I have taken the time to book a streaming show that's gonna air this Saturday, and I can tell you more about that later if you want to. But that's going to be the most I can do right now. It's just a streaming event where people can choose to support it financially if they care to, and that's going to be about as far as I can get for the moment.
Well, go ahead. Let's talk about that since that's kind of the topic of right now. Kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, there are a couple places in Baltimore right now that are doing streaming events, and there's a company called Blue House Productions that I've done a lot of work with. A guy named Jeff Gruber runs that, and he's putting on these streaming events. So I'll be doing that this Saturday at 8 p.m., and you can find information about that from my website, which is www.jeffreedbass.com. And, there'll be links there on how it all works. But it's aired on YouTube and Facebook. And you can watch it there, and then through PayPal and Venmo, you can send the money that you can to support the event, and that money goes directly to the recording studio with Jeff Gruber and his company, along with the band. And it's a nice opportunity for us as musicians to play this material and get it out there, as awkward as it is to be playing in front of a empty room, essentially. We still get a chance to then get together and enjoy this music together and share it with everybody else.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the beginnings of your jazz journey, kind of how the seeds began and your childhood.
I had a, sort of a unique, I guess everybody's start is pretty unique, but from the beginning years of second grade, learning how to play piano, taking lessons, and in fourth grade, I picked up the trombone as my second instrument. And, it's funny, actually, I wanted to play the tenor saxophone, and I went into this sort of fourth grade meeting time where you get to pick your instrument, and I told the guy, yeah, I want to play tenor saxophone, and he said, oh, well, your lips are actually the wrong shape for tenor saxophone, but you'd be great at trombone. And I said, okay. So I started playing trombone, and that took me all the way up into a couple years of college. I was a classical trombonist. Along that way, I picked up a couple other instruments, electric bass being one of them, and guitar, and, other things that I just messed around with. But when I finally got to college, I wasn't quite sure what to do, but ended up going with classical trombone as a focus for a couple years, which I wasn't totally happy with. And at some point, I made the switch to jazz electric bass. I haven't played acoustic bass yet, but as I started doing that, one day I picked up an upright that was in the bass room at the college I went to, which is called Towson University here in Maryland. And I really I picked up the bass and I carried it to a practice room and I played an A, and I remember the whole room was just shaking and my body was shaking from the huge vibrations from this instrument, and I was obsessed with it. So I had listened to a lot of jazz in high school, but I had never really gotten into playing it until that point. And from that point on, I just decided that was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I pretty much have just, from that point on, been a professional musician, and it's been a wonderful career. It's been a wonderful ride so far.
What do you like the best about being a musician?
Well, I tell you, I have a new answer to that post-coronavirus, or even though we're in the middle of it. I never really did a whole lot of playing in front of empty rooms until recently. And it's been sort of an eye-opening experience that the lack of audience in the room with me there's something missing. There was a great guitarist that I worked with in Baltimore named Paul Wingo, and he used to say, the listener creates the music. And the young version of me sort of nodded my head and smiled, not understanding what he meant. And I have to say, it's been up until about now until I really truly understood how much music I played now in front of no one. And it's funny how that connection between the audience and the band is like nothing else. I don't find that joy anywhere else in my life, where I get to express something, whatever that might be, through somebody else's music or my own, and have people listen to it. And my reactions to what's happening in the moment then is different because of their presence. And that's actually what I love most about performing music is the opportunity to share it with other people, which, to come back to the coronavirus situation that we're in now, that's the reason it's actually really hard for me, is because I don't get that opportunity now. And I really am looking forward to getting back and playing in front of a room of anywhere from 10 to 100 to 1,000 people, all those numbers of people. It's a special experience, and that's what I really love.
So let me ask you this. When we do return to live music, what revelations do you hope both musician and the crowd gets from this time away from live music?
Well, my hope is that everyone is going to see what I just mentioned, on a deeper level, because that's exactly how I feel. Of course, my fear is that everyone's going to realize that they don't miss it that much and they're not going to come back and experience it. I mean, that would be a terrible thing to happen. I mostly just hope that people take the time to respect how special and unique an experience that is. And this can be any kind of music. Jazz is my first love, but all types of expression, thinking about theater, people who work in the theater departments and actors in musicals and things like that, they're also not getting the opportunity to do something like that. So I hope that people can remember that that's a special and unique thing we have as humans, and to be able to share that with each other is a special thing.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, and your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
That's a good question. Who do I think I am? If I identify as anything, well, there are a few things I identify as. I certainly identify as a musician. I can't see my life without it. Even if it's, currently it's a source of income for me as well. Well, not as currently, but up until now, it has been a huge source of income for me. My only source. Regardless of that, I'm always going to be a musician. That's always going to be there for me. But I also see myself as a parent. It's, especially now that this has all happened, day to day, that's what I do. I spend time with my children, and it's actually been wonderful to have this much time with them. And in a way, I would say that my family defines me even more than my music does. So, yeah, that's, being married with children has been just a wonderful experience, and that's a big part of how I see myself.
It's a great answer, great way to wrap everything up. Jeff, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. Stay safe and good luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Baltimore, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jeff for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.